just do fully zipped like you.
Oh, I don't have a zipper.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it's like fully closed. Hey guys, I'm Blake.
And Bryana.
And today we're going to be talking about Event Horizon. We wanted to take some time to talk to you about a pretty neat sci-fi horror movie from the 1990s that, in its time, in its release, didn't really garner a lot of attention. And people weren't super into it. It wasn't a really big release when it came out. That being said, over time, it's grown into this kind of massive cult film amongst horror and sci-fi fans that, you know, people kind of hold with the ilk of 1979's Alien and The Thing and stuff like that. You know, it's a very well-respected film and it's got a lot of history to it, but it's fairly extreme and it's got a really rich story from what's available there. So, the idea of this movie is a really, really creative and unique one.
Yeah.
Like, it's something I didn't see anybody do prior to that in a movie.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, stories like this have been written in sci-fi novels before. It's not a, you know, it's hard to be original these days.
Yeah.
So, it's the story of this salvage/rescue crew, just like the Nostromo in Alien, that is sent out, and much like a lot of these 90s and 80s horror movies, they were in the middle of a vacation that they deserved greatly, and they're all very angry to be pulled out of this vacation so that they have to go on this mission to this beacon that's going off that they have to respond to so that they can salvage the ship or rescue the people. It kind of just starts out with your normal getting to know you type scene like they did in Aliens with James Cameron, where you're getting to meet all the space marines, and you know, they give you a little touch of each person's personality. There's a very small crew to this ship, and there's the crew of the ship, and then there's an additional character, which is a scientist. So this crew is responding to a beacon. The beacon's coming from the ship, the Event Horizon. The Event Horizon is a ship that was created in 2040 to travel faster than light, but by traveling through an interdimensional gap. So instead of actually just kind of traveling faster than light, what it would do is it would fold space-time so that 2 points were the same point, so that it would just kind of like snap back and forth. But something went wrong, and it disappeared. It was only supposed to be gone for a few hours.
At most.
Right? Yeah. And it just disappeared. And they didn't hear anything for 7 years. But then in 2047, they get this distress beacon, and it's from the Event Horizon. The Event Horizon was created as like a government project to do this, like a secret government project. It was explained to the public as something different than what it actually was. It wasn't just a deep space probe. It was, of course, this thing that did interdimensional travel. It had gone outside of the realm of the reality that we know.
Well, by this point, too,
Yeah.
they explained that by 2015 there was already a colony on the moon. And 2032, I think it said, is that people had started mining on Mars for materials. So by 2040, technology and knowledge of anything is significantly greater than what we have now, for sure. But by this point, I guess they're just trying whatever they can to create the best space exploration gear that they can, and thus created this monstrous ship.
They hire a scientist, Dr. Weir, who is played by Sam Neill, which is Dr. Grant in Jurassic Park. I mean, he's in a number of really great movies. You can see him all over the place. Sam Neill is an incredible actor. He's the one who invented it, and he is the odd man out of the ship's crew, being that none of these people really want him here, none of them really like him. He's only there because he's the one who created this mechanism within the ship that allows it to do this interdimensional jump. And you get the vibe very early on that he isn't welcomed by certain people. Other people are just kind of indifferent. Everyone is unhappy to be on this journey for their own reason, whether it be some like selfish reason or it be that they were supposed to spend time with their family and now they won't be able to, and so forth. It's a big thing. So once the reality of the event horizon is explained to the crew, they all become uneasy about the situation because they don't know where this ship has been for 7 years. It just disappeared. They have no idea. And of course it travels through separate dimensions, so it hasn't been within our understanding of space and time for 7 years. So nobody knows where it went. We have all these characters in the introduction, and we get to know them, and they're all very empathetic. Like, everyone in their own way is a character that you can get on the side of. You know, even the ones that are like kind of aggressive and such, you can understand why they feel the way they do. Like, why they would be upset to be in the situation they're in. They absolutely are in the right. As things go on, you do see the camaraderie a little better. In the beginning, they thrust you into it and you don't really know these people and their relationships, but you really do get to know them well. And I only mention that to say that the performances in this film are very, very good. Everyone carries their weight very well. Even people who, I mean, a lot of these people that you'll see in this movie aren't people who are really working anymore. Quite a few of them, actually, and that's very sad because they all do a very good job in this. But the ship's captain is played by Lawrence Fishburne, which is really cool because it was like The Matrix before The Matrix. Well, really The Matrix 2 before The Matrix, but, you know, same difference. But there are a lot of really, really familiar faces, and if you're someone who watched a lot of movies from the 90s, you'll pretty much recognize everyone. The story, as far as information goes and as far as how well it's filled out, pretty much only follows Dr. Weir and Lawrence Fishburne. Now, we get a little bit from Kathleen Quinlan's character, who is like the medical associate or med tech on the ship. You get a little bit of background on her because, you know, she has this child that's in a wheelchair and she was supposed to be spending time with this child, but she got called out on this thing. She's supposed to be a very sympathetic or empathetic character. You're supposed to feel for her greatly. Now, they don't manipulate that as a female. You know, they have that represented within male characters also. They're not trying to create this weak image for a female. Every character in this film is a very strongly written character. They all have a very strong resolve. They're very tough. Even the ones that are the weakest are tougher than most daily people you'll run into. But as far as like the characters go and how you got to know them in the beginning and stuff like that, like how did you feel about that? And how did you feel like the actors carried that?
Overall, I felt like they all did very well. I personally definitely sided more with the crew than I did with Dr. Weir.
Oh, absolutely.
Immediately he felt odd. It was just uncomfortable every time he was on screen, and I don't know why. I guess. Well,
he's suffering from hallucinations that are brought on from depression from losing his wife, who killed herself because he was working on the engine for this ship.
Yeah.
And he committed all of his time to this ship, and so she killed herself. And he is, throughout the film, suffering from hallucinations that are serving to set tone and mood for what's going on. Because if you watch a trailer for this film, it pronounces the film as being much more action-oriented than it is.
Like
it's not. It's a very story-driven drama for characters, and it has you like wondering what's happening and what's going on throughout the film. It isn't so much a bunch of explosions and stuff like that. It doesn't really go down the way that the trailer lays it out. But the trailer, of course, is trying to put butts in seats, so
yeah.
That's...
I mean, I don't know. He just, like, even when he was in the room briefing them about why they were even there, I mean, I can understand why he was so excited, but, like, I don't know. It made it feel that much more uncomfortable. Because everybody else in the room was pissed off. They didn't want to be there. They didn't want to listen to him. They didn't care. And pretty sure it made them even more angry to see how excited he was to even go on this trip at all.
Because he has like this unnatural infatuation with the ship.
Yeah, it's
like,
it's weird. And
it
like
really
the whole
is like
time,
he cheated on his wife with this ship.
Yeah,
like,
it's
very
weird.
much so.
It is very weird, and
It is very weird.
haha.
Yay!
I don't know, like when the captain, he looks the most angry out of everybody. He doesn't say it as like everybody else is more vocal about it, but he
has a great amount of self-control.
He does.
Yeah.
But then we'll
throughout
have
the entire film.
Yeah, but then like he will have these moments where he's like, "No, I acknowledge that everybody is upset. I am too. But too bad. We're already here, so get over it." And it's like, okay, well, I mean,
yeah,
that's the only way you can look at this, because
there's, you've got this other guy over here. It's Smith, and he's like
very verbal about it.
Completely like outwardly aggressive about this, to the point that he's just like shit talking Sam Neill's character up and down, and Lawrence Fishburne is constantly having to shut him up. But everybody has their displeasures about being there, but Lawrence Fishburne does maintain himself very well, and he keeps the rest of the people kind of going. And I
mean, that's good for his character, because he's the captain having to run this thing, so
yeah. I mean, they all play it well. They all play who they are very well. What they're doing, they're kind of like space cowboys, and some of them almost literally are space cowboys, especially towards the end, because there's a really hilarious scene that I have to imagine was an afterthought rather than being there the whole time. So, okay, they go into cryostasis, and they get to the event horizon after that. When they get to the event horizon, their ship is damaged by this electrical impulse that occurs when a member of the ship touches the drive that is the interdimensional gate. And so the ship gets damaged, and then much later on in the movie, there's someone working on the ship, and they're out in space.
Cooper.
And they get like blown way out into space by this explosion. Somehow are able to release their oxygen in their packs and shoot back to the ship, which wouldn't be so unbelievable if A, they weren't in like the storms of Neptune, and B, he was already out of atmosphere. Like you could see the storms look like as if you were looking at them from space. Mm-hmm. So you could see that he was a great distance. Even if he released his rockets, it would never work, and it was just hilariously corny. It was obviously meant
really
to
was.
be there to be silly, and it felt so out of place.
Yeah,
I feel like the movie would be well served by that scene being edited out.
But I also felt like it was almost included just to give Cooper more screen time.
Oh, for sure.
Because he wasn't really there for a lot of what was going on, it felt like.
No, well, there were
he would like pop in and say something, and then would just like
there were a lot of
disappear.
characters that were that way, and that comes from, and we'll just go ahead and get to it, that comes from the fact that there is a great deal of lost footage for this film.
Yeah.
There's a lot of lost footage for this film, from what I understand, and it's kind of a common knowledge thing amongst the people who were fans of this film. And the problem is that a lot of the lost footage is most of the stuff you'd want to see, like most of the horrifying stuff, and most like those things. There's a ton lost. It's a big mystery for film fans what that footage holds, and where it went and where it is. There is speculation that there is a full copy in existence, but who knows. But when you're watching the film, you're going to notice that it feels that way, that it feels like there are pieces missing, and that's because there are.
We started watching it, and I didn't know that before watching this. I didn't really know anything about this movie before watching it. And so after watching it, you mentioned that to me, that there's like a significant amount missing.
Yeah,
and
a great deal.
After you said that, a lot of stuff made sense to me.
A lot of that stuff that like, there are a lot of scenes where they flash imagery over like other scenes, and that flashed imagery that's like very like horrifying images, there was a lot more of extension of that where it was full scenes, but you just can't really get that now.
I mean, not to say that like the way it is bad. Or
No, it's
like
it's
you
a
can still
good film
watch
on
it.
its own.
You can still get the
Yeah.
story. It's not like anything significant to.
You're just more left to your devices to figure out like
it just,
certain things.
Yeah, it just kind of lets you fill in the blanks with your own imagination. Because it's not. I could tell that like there's definitely stuff missing, but it wasn't to the point that it created gaps in the plot or anything like that. Like it still has its story. It's just it would have been enriched if it had whatever
there was
missing.
a lot of imagery missing that needed to be there, and you really get that feeling. I mean, there's just enough imagery there to make you aware of what's going on and what happened and things like that, because there is definitely some horrifying imagery in this, and they don't really hold back or wait to show you that. This movie is not a movie that is going to make you wait till the third act to get to all of that stuff.
No, it shows it
in the beginning.
Pretty early, yeah. Because it's, well, the moment that they even get on the ship, you start to get some of that. So it's pretty quick.
Just corpses floating around in zero gravity.
It's great.
Things like that. But once they board the ship, just getting back to like the story of all that, they find out that stuff is wrong. You know, like we were saying, the crew immediately sees that things are awry, and their ship gets damaged, and so now they are stranded within this ship, the Event Horizon, while their ship that they came on is repaired. Their ship is the Lewis and Clark. Haha. It would have been more haha if the Event Horizon was called the Lewis and Clark, because the Event Horizon was actually doing what Lewis and Clark were doing.
Yeah.
But, you know, so they get stranded on the ship, and they've got, 20 hours of oxygen, I think it is, something like that.
Give or take. I just remember at once there was an emphasis on there only being 10 hours left, but I mean, they get pretty antsy the whole time about it anyway, so...
The amount of time they have never really feels constrained, though.
No.
It doesn't feel like that's the thing we need to be worried about.
I will say that was one detail that did bother me, though, because I think it was 20 hours is what they started with. So they were like, okay, we got 20 hours to fix the ship, get out, because obviously we don't need to be here. That's fine, whatever. And I don't know, maybe like 5 minutes of movie time passes and they're already down to like the 10 hours or something like that. And I'm like, there wasn't really enough in there to...
I chalk that up to missing footage.
I mean, it would have to be, because there wasn't anything that really happened in that time that would have taken 10 hours.
No.
So, like, that just felt weird. And then, like, it jumped from that to, I think, 4.
Oh,
like,
yeah, this
really
movie
quick.
moves at, like, a breakneck pace. Like, it is not a long movie.
No, and then,
Like,
so,
by
like...
any stretch of the imagination.
What bothered
is
me?
sad.
Yeah, what bothered me the most is that so it jumps from 10 hours to 4 hours left, and it's like, okay, now it feels like there should be some kind of something happening, and like that's when a lot of stuff does happen, but that feels like it takes like 10 hours. It doesn't feel like...
Yeah, that's the thing, is like, there's not a lot of time in between these things.
No.
It feels like it's moving fairly quickly, like the story you're watching, but the whole emphasis on time just seems very needless, because it's either be stressed out about that or be stressed out about this spaceship, you know, like...
Yeah, like it definitely felt like it was unnecessary, and I do think that...
There was more than enough to worry about already.
Right, and there probably was some missing footage somewhere in that frame that would have explained something, but it just felt like nothing was happening and they were just stressing out, just sitting there. So it was like, that wasn't necessary. You might as well just cut all of that out and just...
Yeah, because the part that's stressful are these people are having hallucinations, and when the crew member touches the gate to just kind of inspect it, and it causes that electrical wave, well, that causes him to go into like a coma, and when he comes out of the coma, he's kind of in this psychosis because he's been shown these visions of terrible things that are going to happen to the crew of this ship, potentially, like premonitions of like horrors that could occur, and he's just kind of in the psychosis, and he puts himself in the airlock and without any suit or anything like that, and you know, gets sucked out into space before big old Fishburne is able to rescue him. And he's not really in the movie for the rest of it because he's just kind of on a hospital bed
Well, yeah, because after that, he
He gets very seriously injured when he gets sucked into space, obviously. So he like just lays on in the like med area for the rest of the movie, and is taken care of by Kathleen Quinlan's character.
Which I also felt like was a waste of a character because I liked him.
Yeah, he was a great character. Had good energy. He was 100% positive.
Yeah.
He was the only crew member that was positive. He had nothing negative to say about being on this trip at all. He was happy to be there. He was happy about everything that was going on. He didn't think anything was weird. Everything was okay. Yeah. He was also the youngest person there, which, obviously.
Yeah.
Like, they're gonna do that to the kid.
Yeah. And, I mean, technically, he shows up at the end again, but, like...
Well, I mean, yeah, he is a survivor of this story. He survives this story.
Which is wild, considering what he went through, but...
Yeah, I mean...
That's besides the point.
3 characters survive the film,
Yeah.
and he is among them.
Justin, his name's Justin, the kid.
Yeah.
Once he is brought back onto the ship, and they put him in the, like, hospital bay or whatever, he does just kind of disappear from the story. They say, okay, yeah, he'll live, and then they just kind of drop him.
Yep.
I had actually completely forgotten of his existence until they said his name again at the very end, and I was like, whoa, wait a minute, he actually survived? Yeah. How and why?
Well, he was lucky enough to be unconscious, which means that he didn't suffer the effects of, because like the ship is possessed.
Yeah.
Essentially, it is alive, it is cognizant, and it is like influencing the minds of the people within it.
Yeah.
And because he's unconscious, nothing can happen to him. Essentially, he's just laying on a table. So everybody else though is just screwed, and it kind of causes a lot of problems. Yeah, that character just he just kind of disappeared, and I'm assuming that's less missing footage and more just the fact that what is he going to be doing?
I mean, I know. I
he's
just
unconscious, so
I don't know. It felt like it happened so quick, and then like he just didn't matter anymore.
Now the pacing of it, I can chalk up to there being missing footage.
Because like I don't know. They sent him as one of the first 3 to investigate the ship, and that's when he finds like the core and he touches it. Like everything after that is so quick in concerning his character. So I don't know. I feel like to me watching it almost felt like they just didn't know what else to do with his character, but they didn't want to totally kill him off. So they were just like, he's just gonna...
Well, the thing is his presence throughout the story would have been bad for the tone.
Yeah, and no, like I get that. So I guess what I'm saying is if they weren't going to use him, I'm just saying if they weren't going to use him, they should have just went ahead and killed him off. Like, that would have made more of an impression, I think, on the audience and the other characters.
But again, it's really important to emphasize that like the previous crew of the ship, they go to this alternate dimension that is this realm of just like chaos where pleasure is pain and pain is pleasure and things like that, and it's just this horrifying, terrible place, and they are all dead. Like they all get killed off, and I don't know what I'm trying to say here. I don't know. It just wouldn't make any sense for him to be. After we learn certain things, his presence just wouldn't make any sense. So to kill him off early on probably would have served them better, or not really would have served them better, but it would have made more sense. But the thing is they kind of I think they wanted to wait for that reveal until after we knew about the crew of because he gets his injuries and shit like that before we ever learn anything truly about what happens to the other crew, because they get this transmission that they have to decipher. It's this little video recording, and they have to decipher it, and it takes a long time, like it does in sci-fi movies.
Yeah.
And, so all of his stuff has kind of happened before they actually get it worked out. And then when they see the video, these people are like raping and murdering each other and like cannibalizing each other and ripping their own body parts off and out and, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think they really wanted to wait for that level of shock for that scene, which was a good way to do it. I think. I think that that's a good reveal for like how depraved this world can be. And I mean, if they would have killed a character early on in some other way, like had them get like cut in half by something while they were boarding the ship or something like that, I would have been cool with that. But having it be also affiliated with the supernatural aspects of what's going on, because it's
I just mean, like,
a possessed or haunted ship.
Yeah, I mean, I guess not necessarily in connection with that. I don't know. It was just, it felt odd to me that, I mean, he was obviously broken by whatever it was that he saw.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Makes
like,
total sense. I get that. And
I mean, he tried to kill himself, and he said that he wanted to die because he had seen these things that he had seen.
Right, and like that alone was already impacting the characters, and I don't know, I felt like it just, I don't know, like there was something there, and it didn't connect. I don't know what, but because they brought him back before too much damage had happened to him, it just didn't mean anything. So it was like, well, okay, he's just gonna be off to the side now.
Yeah.
Don't worry about him. He doesn't exist anymore. It's okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. That felt weird.
Well, he comes back into play later on to provide a scare moment with Kathleen Quinlan's character. Yeah, it was just the ship playing tricks on her because it showed her son and all that stuff.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's right. Anyway, I just felt like he seemed to be a lot more important than he ended up being.
Well, all of the characters kind of, the ones that really seemed to have more importance were the ones that we kind of seemed to see the least of.
Which is, I mean, missing footage and all, but like,
Yeah.
I don't...
DJ. He's the crisis analyst. But DJ is a character you don't really see much, but he's, from what I gather, kind of a very important member of the crew.
He's the one that translates the Latin.
Yes.
Isn't he? He's, okay. Which I thought was interesting, that considering everybody's backgrounds, he's the only one. I don't know why that stood out to me. He was the only
because
one.
Because he's the one that has an accent, so he's the one that knows Latin.
Of course.
So they decipher an audio clip before they decipher the video clip.
Right. They get the audio. I think it's before they board Event Horizon. Dr. Weir shows it to them.
Yes, there is an audio transmission, which is the reason that they end up going on this, and it is just an amalgamation of horrifying sounds of people being murdered and screaming with this guy speaking Latin over it. And later in the video, you actually get to see what the audio is, and the gentleman speaking Latin has ripped out his own eyeballs and is holding them in his hands.
It's great.
As he's speaking Latin. I think it's a great scene. I love that scene. I know for a fact, like from what I've read and what I've heard, that a lot of what's missing are the more grotesque things, and I know that had some extension to it, some background on what happened to the other people, as well as, you know, there was more to what we saw of what happens to this crew, like in the premonitions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, anywho, just getting back to the story, you know, we're mostly following Sam Neill and Lawrence Fishburne's characters, and throughout this we kind of learn that Lawrence Fishburne has, you know, he's got his skeletons in his closet. He had a crew once, and he let a member of the crew die, and that's always haunted him, and the ship is kind of using that against him. And Sam Neill, of course, it loves the ship, and so the ship is using that to manipulate Sam Neill. So essentially Sam Neill becomes this like human catalyst for the ship to communicate, and he becomes our protagonist later on in the movie. So throughout the entire third act, it's this situation of the ship's crew is trying to escape this ship because, you know, they've seen all of these terrible premonitions, you know, of this woman sees her son with like terrible sores all over his legs, and DJ gets killed, and a character, what was his name? Justin, he, you know, throws himself out of the airlock. So like everybody's just like really freaking out, and they're all having these various hallucinations, these various experiences where they're seeing these terrible things, and they just want to get off the ship. Then Sam Neill gets in their way as a
Yeah.
as a by proxy for the ship. He does the ship's bidding, essentially. In the third act, we're pretty much just following Sam Neill and Lawrence Fishburne 100%. We see these other characters, but mostly because of how they're interacting with Lawrence Fishburne. Nobody's interacting with Sam Neill, really, other than Lawrence Fishburne. And I think they decide to blow up the ship. They're going to get onto their vessel, fly a little bit out into space, and then they're going to fire some type of artillery at the ship until it is vaporized. Once Sam Neill learns of this, he's like, you can't do this to the ship. He decides to take it upon himself to sabotage their little exit. And he takes an explosive device that was on the original ship that was a security measure for saving them in case there was some type of issue where they had to separate the two pieces of the ship and use one half as an escape pod. And he blows up the salvage crew's ship, which in turn kills one of the salvage crew members and launches our friend out of the atmosphere of the planet before he's able to use his rockets to come back, I guess. It seems far-fetched, but okay.
That did feel very
out of
forced.
place. Really out of place. Just
that was kind of
like it was from a different movie.
Yeah.
Like it was just really.
Well, and even
weird.
that whole time, that character was obviously worried, but was obviously not worried. He was this happens all the time. given if it were a more popular film, this is a character that Will Smith would have played. Yeah, that's
very, very loud, and he even has the Will Smith look from Independence Day, not the fade, but he's got the mustache, and he's always walking around without his shirt on and flirting with the ladies, and because that's just how they stereotypically wrote characters back then for black actors, which was irritating. But yeah, so most of the action and craziness that happens in this movie, as far as things you'll see in the trailer that look rather action-oriented, they all happen in the third act. All of it. Mm-hmm. The first and second act are essentially just developing how this ship is manipulating these characters and kind of learning bits and pieces about what's happened with this ship, what we can with the footage we have.
Yeah.
It mostly becomes a fight between Sam Neill and Lawrence Fishburne, both a physical fight and a fight of wits as far as surviving this situation. So at one point, Sam Neill, this is harder to believe than the guy using his rockets. At one point, Sam Neill gets blown out into space and somehow shows up later, naked, and he has regrown eyes that he had previously ripped out of his face.
His face is all torn up.
Yeah, there is definitely footage missing for this.
Yeah,
100%.
Well, but see, then the captain there even is how did you even get back on here? I don't know if they directly ask that, but he answers the question oh well, she saved me. The ship saved me.
Yeah,
she's not gonna let me leave.
Yeah.
But it still feels okay, but how? Because I don't. That just it definitely feels like there is something big
it doesn't,
missing.
Yeah, it's the one scene where I absolutely know there's something missing because
there has to be.
It just makes no, because he now has eyes again. That's the big thing. Is there has to be a scene that explains the eyes. It's not really the getting back to the ship. It's the eyes. He had empty, hollow eye sockets, which is a big thing throughout this movie.
Particularly for him, that character.
Yeah, because he keeps seeing his dead wife with no eyes.
Yeah.
That's something that's always gotten me about this film. It's the only thing that's really bothered me about there not being footage is him having eyes at the end again. But they have their back and forth, Sam Neill and Lawrence Fishburne, and it goes about how you'd expect. The Sam Neill beats him up pretty bad, and it becomes very apparent that the only option that they have to save that Lawrence Fishburne has to save the remainder of his crew is to kill himself and destroy the ship that he's on with Sam Neill. And so that's what he decides to do, and thusly rescues the rest of the crew, the 3 members that are left, which are Rocket Pack Guy, Discount Laura Dern, and I'm serious, and then, you know, Justin, who is just like a body.
I mean, he is, and like, not that it's absolutely necessary, but I would like to know who snatched him up and put him into the
no idea,
stasis
because
chamber.
that is also not explained at all. The one character that could have done it, the only scene that we see for them in that moment is they are the ones that are led away and killed by the ship. So they must have done it prior to that.
Which, I mean, I guess it's not absolutely necessary, but I've just been wondering that ever since then, because you have to be, like, standing in this chamber for it to do its thing, and then you're put to sleep. So, like,
Yeah.
who got him in there and got him positioned
no
so
idea.
that it would work, and, like, when did that happen? Because, I don't, whatever.
Yeah. And there's a strange scene at the end where they're off on the front of the ship, and they're you know, going back, and a rescue crew comes, and it's, you've seen it a million times in these sci-fi horror movies. It's a fake out scene where the rescue crew comes, and, you know, they think they're safe and all that, and then it turns out, oh, he lifts the mask and it's Sam Neill, he's the bad guy, and has eyes. You know, that was just a dream sequence or whatever.
Yeah.
And then they do open the pods, the rescue crew is actually there, and they get rescued.
Yeah. Or do they? Because the doors close on them.
Yeah.
And we don't know exactly what that means, but theory is that the ship is still alive and is now trapped, the survivors and the new rescue crew, in what's left of the ship.
That would be amazing, because I would love to see a sequel to this movie.
That would be interesting.
I'd also just love to see the whole version of the film.
Yes, please.
It's a beautiful movie. I think it's one of the most well-made sci-fi horror films ever. It's incredibly underrated. I'm glad that it has the cult status that it has, but it is still incredibly underrated. I thoroughly enjoy this movie. This is a movie I absolutely recommend. I think you should go out and watch it. If you like horror, if you like sci-fi, I think you should watch this movie. Now, if you need monsters or aliens, they're not going to be there. So
this is all more psychological
supernatural.
and supernatural.
100%, yeah.
It's weird.
I mean, you're going to see grotesque things, and you're going to see people in grotesque forms, but you're not going to see like a monster or an alien or anything like that.
It's not like extreme body horror.
No, there's some pretty extreme body horror.
But it's not like lengthy. Granted, because we don't have that footage, but there is there is body horror.
Terrifying imagery in there. Some
Yeah.
stuff that if your child saw it flash in front of them, they'd likely cry.
It's not friendly at
Yeah,
all.
it's very terrifying stuff.
Although
Gruesome murders.
I'm
Or tortures, rather. Because they
Yeah.
are alive.
So my weird thing is I'm fine with body horror to a degree. I can't do the cannibalism.
Mm-hmm.
Cannot.
And they were cannibalizing each other.
And they were eating each other alive, literally, and it was.
They were raping each other and dismembering each other while eating each other.
It's too much.
It is if you like the comic book Crossed, you're gonna love this movie. It's pretty serious. It is nothing to play around with. This is definitely not a movie for people who Zathura is your favorite sci-fi movie.
Yeah, no.
That is not. This is not for you.
No. It's not to say that whatever that is in there is bad or whatever.
No. It's about boilerplate for what it ought to be.
Yeah, and it had the shock factor. That's what it was there for. It did the job. It's great.
And it was about setting tone, because I think there was 1 or 2 jump scares in this movie, but a lot of the other stuff was about setting the mood and creating an atmosphere, and they really did that. It kind of like the Overlook Hotel in The Shining. You really feel like this ship is aware of these people within it and influencing them. They do get that across very well, and I think that's kind of what allows the film to be successful in achieving its goal with storytelling. Do you recommend this movie?
I do. I mean, after doing some of the reading and you telling me that there is so much missing, I wish there were more.
Yeah.
Just watching it initially without that information, I still liked it. It was still fun.
Yeah.
It was.
For sure.
It was entertaining. It was nice to watch. But yeah, I wish that I could see the full version and see what it is that I'm missing out on, because there just are
still images and things like that that are available from some of the missing footage, but that's about it. And then there's a little bit from the film's creators about what it is that's missing as far as the story pieces or like imagery, but that's really all you got. It's a bummer.
It is.
It's a really, really good movie.
That I would like to get some answers.
Yeah.
But I mean that it's not like it prevented it from being.
Well, from my understanding, it's nearly 45 minutes that's missing. So, or something to that effect. Oh, it's a huge amount.
That is a lot.
It's a huge amount. It makes it a completely different movie.
Yeah, but I mean that's okay. It's still good. It's still fun, thrilling.
Yeah, it's very. It'll keep you interested in what you're seeing.
Yeah, it never gets boring.
Yeah,
it does stay interesting from start to finish.
And the suspension of disbelief is that's very easy to attain with this film because of how well the characters are acting out the story that's being told. So there isn't a problem with that either. It really is an effectively made film. I can't think of why it wasn't successful in its time, other than the fact that it probably just wasn't palatable to what people were wanting to see.
I will say, total side note, the one thing that really took me out of it at any time was some of the CG.
Oh yeah, certainly, but that comes with the territory.
Oh yeah, I mean it wasn't.
There hasn't been a remaster of the films, and there likely won't be.
It wasn't there's not a lot of it. First off, there's not a lot of CG at all really.
Yeah, no, they do a good job with prosthetics.
It's very minimal, but what CG there is very obvious. Now, granted, this came out 97, so that is forgiven, but it was kind of laughable because we have come so far since then with that kind of technology. Because there was one shot, I think, right when they got on the ship, and there was just miscellaneous items like water bottles and things just floating around, and it did make me laugh because it did look a little bad, but other than that, it's great.
Yeah.
Because it's very minimal. I think it's only that scene.
It's a small amount of time,
yeah.
And it's mostly throughout that introduction sequence.
Yeah, so it's not the whole movie has little bits and pieces.
Much.
It's just that little bit, and then the rest of it's actual
yeah, they rely on
scenery
practical effects quite a bit.
So that's good.
It's kind of akin to a Ridley Scott alien film. It's the ship is built. It's got huge sets. It's gorgeous.
Which I love that. That was really cool.
Yeah. I guess for this week, my track suggestion will probably be Catholic Block by Sonic Youth. And did you have a movie suggestion?
I honestly, all I can think about is Fargo, so I'll just suggest the movie Fargo.
Yeah, it's quite good. Coen Brothers. It's a good watch.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot for watching the video, guys. Like, subscribe. We really appreciate any feedback. I hope you guys have a great day.
See ya.
The Fargo movie is associated with the Fargo TV series?
Ugh, I know.
What?